Hi everybody, Troy from Maxima Racing Oils here. Today we're going to talk about assembly lube and assembly grease and the proper application for both products. So what we have here today is a little Can-Am engine. We're going to talk about assembly lube. What we want to do, we want to start with assembly lube on our bearings. So what we want to do is we're going to use a pretty liberal amount of assembly lube on each one of our bearings. What I like to do is just get it in there out of the bottle to start with, and then I'm going to take my finger and just spread it around. So we're going to put it on the main bearings, then we're also going to put it on the balance shaft bearings. We'll be installing both of those today. So we got a pretty good amount here so far. We're going to take our finger and just spread that lube out and make sure that we have that bearing completely coated and covered. And then we're also going to talk about grease and using it on thrust faces, because we want that grease. It's really got some high pressure additives in it, and I like that, you know, on a thrust face, because we want that to stick around and not run off, since it's in a little different position. So what we want to do is coat these thrust faces. And this particular engine doesn't use a thrust bearing. It actually thrusts against the block itself. So, but we're going to treat this just like we would any other normal engine bearing that would have a thrust face on it. So we're going to coat all these surfaces in our thrust face. So another great application for assembly grease is going to be on gears. So anytime we've got something that's gear to gear, like this Can-Am engine, where the crankshaft drives the balance shaft, what we want to do is we want those gears also to get a liberal coating of assembly grease, because we want that to stick around during the break-in process. So again, we're going to be pretty liberal with the assembly grease on the gear surfaces, because again, the grease does have some great high pressure additives in it, which is really going to protect these gears in the break-in process. So now we've got this gear coated, we're going to go ahead and drop in the balance shaft. Everything's been cleaned, all the clearances have been checked, so this engine is actually ready for assembly. So we're going to do the same thing on the gear on the crankshaft. We want both of these gears coated. Okay, now we're ready to drop the crankshaft in. So now both units have been installed. We'll rotate through and make sure everything feels correct. Make sure we have in play on both. So there's just one example of how we're going to use assembly lube and assembly grease in an engine assembly. So now we're going to move on to a cylinder head. The assembly lube is a great product for our valve stems. We're going to lube up a valve stem, again, pretty liberally. We want to make sure we got plenty on the stem. Drop them in. And I like the assembly lube in this application versus the grease, because we still want to maintain that feel once we slide that valve in the guide. We want to be able to feel it, you know, that we don't have excess drag or anything right there. So obviously we don't have locks and retainers on this and springs, but we're going to go ahead and talk about how in a situation or a application like this where it's an overhead cam with a bucket and shim type deal, where we're going to use assembly lube versus assembly grease. So on the bucket, we're going to coat the outside of the bucket in lube. And then a great place for the grease is going to be on the tip of the valve once we install the bucket. So a little bit on the tip of the valve so that we have that in place. And then we'll slide our bucket in. Again, we're going to coat the outside of the bucket with assembly lube. And we have the tip of the valve already coated in grease. Go ahead and drop that bucket in. And then we're going to go ahead and use grease on the top of the bucket itself where the camshaft is going to ride. So we get a good coat of grease on top. So once we install the camshaft, we've got good lubrication for the break-in process there. We're going to move into assembly grease for flat tappet cams. Get this question a lot. What do we have for flat tappet break-in protection? Our assembly grease is an absolutely fantastic product for this application. So what I like is it's a very heavy grease. First off, we're going to coat the distributor gear with the grease. It's a great grease for break-in and protection on all types of gears. Even on our billet core roller camshafts, we still want to use this grease on the gear for break-in there. And then we're going to get really liberal on the lobes themselves. A lot of people are going to ask, you know, with this much grease, where is it going to end up? Where am I going to see this? And the short and the simple answer is, once that engine has been run and up to temperature, unlike some other assembly products, you're not going to see this in your oil pan. You're not going to find it in the oil filter. So it's going to emulsify with the oil, and it will blend and disappear. Like I said, some of the other break-in products out there work great, but they come up short when it comes to blending with the oil. Sometimes we find it stopping up an oil filter, or we find it laying in the bottom of an oil pan, and some of those products are a little bit abrasive. It's one of the things that you will find with ours is there's no problem with this blending with the oil and not slowing down oil flow through the oil filter. To summarize everything we've talked about today, assembly lube and assembly grease both have very specific applications and where we want to use them. No matter if we're working on a V8 Chrysler or we're working on a side-by-side engine. The application is going to be the same for every type of engine. And if you ever have any questions, feel free to reach out to us anytime.